On March 26, 2024, Persona 2 Innocent Sin was changed forever when a Mario speedrunner was working on learning the game. This runner, who goes by the name of Rodillo, was playing through the PSP version on emulator. After getting into a battle and defeating all the enemies, something weird happened when reaching the experience screen and trying to move to the screen after that. Instead of just leveling up to level 9 as expected, the party leveled up to level 16 when viewing the points distribution screen. This took Rodillo completely by surprise, as this was not documented at all in either the speedrunning community for Persona or anywhere else online. After finding this out, Rodillo took to the Persona speedrunning Discord and shared his knowledge with the community. He wasn't sure if this was a known trick or not, but he got his answer within just 5 minutes after his post. The community came together almost instantly and was trying to replicate the video that Rodillo posted. People were quickly able to do the trick for themselves and found out a few things from their testing. Rodillo was using the turbo functionality in the PPSSPP emulator, and this was because the game requires a lot of mashing through text boxes, and it was easier on his hands to use it while learning the speedrun. When Rodillo tried to replicate what was happening without using turbo, he'd come up with no results. But after some testing from 2 other runners by the name of Maddie and Molsky, they determined that the trick was frame perfect. So while this was still difficult to do without turbo, it was possible to get more XP if you mashed fast enough and at the right time. That brings me to my next point. Where exactly was this glitch happening? It was found by the community that the additional levels were only obtained after leveling up, so the glitch was happening only when confirming to go to the next screen. The game will let you know if you did it correctly as well, as the sound when going to the next screen will play the same number of times you frame perfectly hit the button to confirm. Each time this happens, it adds the amount of experience you receive from the battle to your characters. Runners were getting up to 4 times the battle experience in their tests on emulator without turbo, so it was already looking somewhat viable for routing. While it appeared that Rodillo made an incredible find for both speedrunners and casual players alike, this type of thing happens quite a bit in the speedrunning community as a whole. Someone ends up finding a new glitch while emulating the game and not on the console version or a PC port. When the community tries to replicate the glitch on console, nothing happens and it turns out to be a hardware emulation issue. That was the problem here. No one had tested this on console yet, and the community was thinking it could be a glitch with the emulator. However, while this was being discussed, Molsky came in and dropped a bombshell of an image in the Discord chat. This exploit worked in the other Persona 2 PSP game, Eternal Punishment, and this finding was huge because it meant the exploit was related to the games and not necessarily the emulator. Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment on the PSP share the same game engine, so it makes sense that an exploit like this would be shared as well. The last thing that needed to happen was for someone to confirm that it worked on console, and thankfully it wouldn't take that long for that to happen. Molsky started up his stream later that day and quickly confirmed that the exploits worked on console. So this meant if you have either game on the PSP or PSTV, you can do this trick right now at home. With the trick console verified, the next question comes down to how does this affect the 2 speedruns where you can use the glitch. Runs of Innocent Sin do a ton of experience funneling into the main character Tatsuya during the boss fights. This is done by killing off the party and defeating the boss. EXP is split between all living characters, so the less you have alive, the more that ends up going to those living party members. This strategy turns Tatsuya into an absolute powerhouse that helps push through the rest of the game. The EXP glitch only increases the effectiveness of this method, allowing for higher levels much earlier. However, one of the bigger time saves comes from an ability called Istoma. If you've ever played a Pokemon game, Istoma is Persona and SMT's version of a repel. When you use it, it prevents encounters with lower level enemies than you. This is used not long after the 4th boss of the run is defeated, and the Nemesis persona learns the ability upon reaching rank 6. Before the glitch, even though Tatsuya is overleveled, there's still some areas where runners can get encounters since they're only leveling from boss fights. Now, you can pretty much get through the remainder of the game without any random encounters. Even though runs usually pick the easy difficulty, Innocent Sin's encounters are very annoying. This is because escaping random fights on easy isn't guaranteed, but rather a certain percentage chance. Keeping all of that in mind, the current fastest time for Innocent Sin's PSP version is 5 hours, 47 minutes, and 2 seconds by Molsky. And if he or anybody else decides to pick up the run with the new glitch, I'm sure the record will drop much further due to the sheer amount of encounters no longer being taken. As for Eternal Punishment PSP, things are not as clear cut. The EXP funneling strat is very similar to Innocent Sin, where you try to put as much experience on the main character as possible. Then the idea is to put a ton of points into the tech stat, increasing magic damage as high as you can early on. This allows for runners to stomp the early bosses, but because they already hit the cap for the stat early, it only affects the early game. As for the encounters, here's where things get interesting. On easy mode in Eternal Punishment, you're guaranteed to run away from random encounters. Now these fights are pretty quick and only take about 12 seconds from when you get into the fight to actually running away. In terms of avoiding these altogether, it's actually more difficult in this game, but there are two feasible solutions in the speedrun, with one being the Estoma ability I mentioned earlier, and a consumable item called the Disguise Goods. Disguise Goods are different from Estoma, where it reduces the encounter rate by a certain percentage. The issue with this is that while EXP is amplified by the glitch, the amount of money runners have is the same, and with that, there's a limited amount of these items they can buy without wasting a ton of resources. Coming back to the Estoma ability, there's only two feasible sources of the ability in the run from Personas. One is at the end of the game, and while the other can be attained much earlier, the amount of resources needed to actually get it wastes more time than what it's worth. There's also the option of trying to get a persona to undergo something called a mutation, which can get runners Estoma pretty early. Mutations happen when you win a battle using a fusion spell, and there's a chance after this happens to cause a persona to change into another one entirely. This can be done with something like a Nekomata to have it mutate into a Hotai? If one of you all could tell me how to say this persona's name, that would be pretty swell. Anyways, this persona learns Estoma at rank 5, but there's a problem with obtaining it in the first place. Not only do you need to get the mutating persona to rank 7 before it even has the ability to do that, but you also have to hope that the fusion spell that finishes the fight makes the mutation happen. When Toxic TT tried it on his end, it took him around 40 attempts to actually do it. So not only does it require time investment the run doesn't allow for, but it's just very random and not viable for attempts. With that all being said, Eternal Punishment PSP is much shorter than Innocent Sin, with the fastest any percent time coming in at 2 hours, 52 minutes, and 41 seconds by Toxic TT. While Toxic thinks this exploit is an incredible find, the impact that it'll have on Eternal Punishment speedruns is negligible, with maybe a couple of minutes of time save if runners can manage to get the EXP glitch consistently in their runs. And while I don't mean to pile on bad news, the EXP glitch doesn't work in the original versions of these games, just the PSP versions. However, while the glitch is only useful for Innocent Sin speedrunning at this time, it doesn't discount Rodillo's discovery and the effort the community put in to make sure it worked. Stay hydrated folks, and go check out this other video of mine I'm sure you'll enjoy.